This is the first lecture for topic 8 on the regulation of sexuality. So the next two topics, topic 8, which is chapter 9, and topic 9, chapter 10, deal with the issue of sexuality. And there's two parts to the sexuality section that we're going to be doing in this class. The first part we start this week, and it's the regulation of sexuality. In other words, the way in which policy tries to control or contain sexuality. And so in that, we'll be taking a focus on prostitution and pornography. The second part has to do with intimidation as it relates to sexuality. And so in that chapter, we're going to be learning about sexual assault and sexual harassment. So let's get started by taking a look at part 1, the regulation of sexuality. The first thing we're going to be talking about is how sexuality issues are framed. In other words, what sort of viewpoint or lens do we look at sexuality issues? And in this, we're going to be talking about the difference between the moralist viewpoint and the libertarian viewpoint. And then we're going to take a look at how feminism fits into these two viewpoints. How does liberal feminism and radical feminism relate to the viewpoints of moralism and libertarianism? To get us thinking about this, I want us to take a look at these 2 or 3 bumper stickers. And if we were in class together, I would be asking you, so look at these bumper stickers, and what are these bumper stickers trying to communicate about the body and therefore by extension sexuality? And so if you owned a car, or if you saw somebody who had a car and they had the bumper sticker, "My body is a temple," or the bumper sticker, "Know ye not that we are the temple of God and that the Spirit of God dwelleth in you," from Corinthians. So if somebody put those bumper stickers on their car, what would they be trying to communicate to you? And notice that the T in temple is a Christian cross. And then look at this bumper sticker at the bottom that says, "Your body may be a temple, but mine is an amusement park." So think about that for a little bit. Maybe even take a pause on the lecture and maybe ask yourself, what do you think that those bumper stickers are trying to communicate? Well, the viewpoint that stems from the "My body is a temple" bumper sticker, sort of sees the body as a manifestation of God or the divine. I mean, a temple is a place where you go to worship, and it's a place where you show your respect for God. And so if you think about your body being a temple, that you think about your body as a place where God dwells in your body, right? That your body is sort of a dwelling place for God. And you would think about your body as being sort of sacred, a place where you would treat it with great respect. And not only that, but you would treat your body in the way that God would like you to treat your body, right? And so the way you would treat your body and the things that you would do to your body would be a reflection of the will of God, because you are made in His image, right? So again, your body is a temple, and God sort of dwelleth in it. And so that what you do with your body, you should, use that your body should be used with this in mind. What we do with our body, how we use our body as it relates to sexuality, should be something that honors God, right? And so that's one viewpoint, kind of encapsulated by those 2 bumper stickers that we looked at. Another view about the body and by extension sexuality is the one that is expressed in this bumper sticker, "Your body may be a temple, but mine is an amusement park." From this viewpoint, the body and sexuality is a source of pleasure and fun, not a sacred place wherein you should worship. That, like an amusement park, it's sort of a free place, a place for engaging in thrilling and fun behavior. And furthermore, that this viewpoint captured on the bumper sticker sort of suggests that a person is the one who decides what they want to do with their body. The individual decides, and maybe it's sort of a private matter, not subject to the dictates of religion. It's a personal choice, not the one that is dictated by God. And so we're going to see that these two views reflected on these bumper stickers kind of fall nicely into the two main viewpoints used to frame issues of sexuality that your textbook talks about. So the moralist viewpoint is one of the two viewpoints that your textbook talks about, the moralist versus the libertarian viewpoint. And the moralist viewpoint is the viewpoint that aligns well with the first perspective, that is that the body is the temple. And so the moralist viewpoint is informed by a conservative religious view, as expressed on the bumper stickers, that the body is a temple wherein the Spirit of God resides, and that sexuality is expressed in relationship to its godly purpose. And so what you do with your body would be a reflection of what God wants as it relates to sex. And so sex would be mostly for procreation. That you maybe wouldn't masturbate because the Bible tells you that you shouldn't spill your seed. You might not touch a woman while she is menstruating because of provisions within Leviticus, etc., etc. And so there are many ways that we could see that human behavior would be shaped as it relates to sort of a theological understanding of the purpose of the body. What we're going to find is that the moralist viewpoint is finds its way into public policy, and we have already seen that as we saw that in contraceptive and the Comstock Acts. So public policy on sexuality should support this divine purpose, this sort of godly understanding of the body. So, for example, if the Bible says that marriage is between Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, then public policy should prohibit same-sex marriage. If the Bible says that sex is mainly for procreation and the creation of a family, not for pleasure, then that you might have public policy that makes it more difficult to use contraceptives, because when you use contraceptives, it decouples pleasure from reproduction, and that's sort of standing in the way of the divine will of God. And if you use your body in a way that is not according to the will of God, then those uses would be considered sinful and moral, wrong, and that public policy should be used to, basically discourage or punish these other uses of the body that don't correspond with the divine will. The libertarian viewpoint takes almost the opposite perspective. Well, from a libertarian viewpoint, they're called libertarians. Why? Because they believe in liberty. They think that one of the most fundamental aspects of what it means to be human is to live freely. And it's true, the libertarian says that that's true in many topics. And so when you look at the libertarian and you ask them what the proper role of government is, the proper role of government is to really get out of the way. That government should only be involved, if at all, in the most sort of constrained sort of spheres within our society. And so the libertarian supports free trade, almost to the laissez-faire free market, because you really want government out of the way. A libertarian would support drug use because they say, look, that's not the business of government to tell you whether you can or cannot use drugs. And so the libertarian, trying to enhance human freedom by having very, very limited government, that they take that viewpoint and they apply it to sexuality as well. From a libertarian perspective, what you do with your body is your business. And that government shouldn't tell you, whether or not you can use contraceptives. It's your choice. Whether or not you can have an abortion, it's your choice. Whether or not you can have, marriage in or outside have sex in or out, within or outside of a marriage, shouldn't tell us who can get married, or maybe even how many people could be involved in a marriage, like polygamy. And so for them, this should be reflected in public policy. Who you love is a private choice, and so that the libertarian would be against sodomy laws. The libertarian would be against sort of laws prohibiting same-sex marriage or polygamy. And also what you do with your body is, is a private choice. And so that if you want to sell your body, sell your sexuality, your sexual services for money, you should be allowed to do it like any other job. If you want to engage in pornography because you feel like there is a market for what your body looks like and you can make money off of it, if you want to produce pornography, that the government shouldn't be involved in that. Polyamory, polygamy, etc. The public policy should sort of support this endeavor to be free as it relates to sexuality. When it comes to debates over public policy as it relates to sex and sexuality, those debates are rarely gendered. They're rarely asking the question of how will this policy relating to sexuality impact the rights of women or the rights of men? That is a question that is usually not asked when it comes to policies that regulate sexuality. Rather, these policies are usually framed as a battle between the viewpoints, the battle between the moralist viewpoint and the libertarian viewpoint. The question is where do feminists stand? Where do they fit in this battle between the moralist and the libertarian perspectives? Do feminists align with the moralists or do the feminists align with the libertarian? Well, it depends on the feminist viewpoint that we're talking about. In other words, it depends on the type of feminism. And there are two main voices in the sexuality regulation debate. The one type of feminism that has one of the more dominant voices is the liberal feminists, and the other viewpoint is the radical feminists. These are the two feminisms that are most likely to be involved in and let their viewpoint be known in policies that regulate sexuality. And so let's look at what liberals and radical feminists believe as it relates to the regulation of sexuality, and then let's see which of the two viewpoints, moralist or libertarian, do they align with. Liberal feminists, sort of like libertarians, place an emphasis on liberty and freedom of choice. Not to as much of an extent as libertarians do, but at the core of liberal feminism is this liberal belief that being free and making your own choice and having your own autonomous decisions is part and parcel of what it means to be a human and also what it means to be a woman. And so that liberal feminists say that women should be free to choose the work that they want to do, seek the education that they want, and any association that they would like to make. That it's like men, women are free to make those choices. And from a liberal feminist point of view, sex is no different. That women and men should be free to express their sexuality with minimal interference from government and also really minimal interference from society. Dress how you want to dress, love who you want to love, and that there shouldn't be constraints on how you express yourself. So that how this liberty is achieved is through limited government regulations. Now, not to the extent that a libertarian would do, but when it comes to freedom of choice as it relates to your body and your sexuality, that there should be very limited government regulations on that. And that when it is regulated, the treatment should be equal. And so, for example, that when you do put regulations on prostitution shouldn't be treated any differently in the criminal justice system as those paying for sex, johns, and those, selling or managing prostitutes, pimps. And so, from a sexuality and sexual regulation point of view, liberal feminists are all about freedom. And therefore, liberal feminists often align themselves with libertarians. Radical feminists are really critical of the liberal feminists' emphasis on liberty. Um, for radical feminists, they view liberal feminists as sort of pawns in the game of patriarchy. In other words, that by linking sexual liberty to sexual liberation, it actually blinds women to sexist oppression that's implicit in sexual expression, particularly because a lot of the ways that women, from a radical feminist point of view, a lot of the way women sexually express themselves is a way that corresponds with stereotypes that are perpetuated by sexism and by the patriarchy. So, sort of a good example of this is that a liberal feminist would say, hey, I'm free. I'm dressing as a sexy firefighter for Halloween. It's my choice, right? I want to go as a sexy firefighter. But the radical feminist would look at that and say, no, you're not free, okay? You're dressed in the chains of patriarchy. You think you're free because you're like, I'm dressing as a sexy firefighter. But from a radical feminist point of view, they say that you're blind. Your emphasis on liberty blinds you to the way that when you express your sexuality in a certain way, it actually reinforces patriarchy. It reinforces seeing women as sexual objects, and you're a pawn in that game. Here's, I think that there could be a very vigorous sort of conversation around pop culture and music and the way that women represent themselves in terms of their sexuality. So on the one side, that's from the WAP video, the famous WAP video, and you got Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B there. And on the other side, maybe a little bit of an older reference, but you see Miley Cyrus in the Wrecking Ball video, right? Now, a liberal feminist would look at those two and then they would say, look, it's women's choice. They represent their sexuality as they want to represent their sexuality. And so if they want to wear revealing clothes, and if they want to emphasize their breasts, if they want to emphasize sort of their coquettishness, right? Like the sexy sitting on the wrecking ball. That's women. They're free to choose that, and in fact, it's empowering. That women are empowered by the way that they want to express themselves sexually. A radical feminist would look at this, and they would look at the WAP video, and they would say that all the grinding and the emphasis on the body parts, and all sort of the sexual innuendo, and even beyond that, it plays into the sexist stereotype of women as these sexual objects that we sort of leer after, right? That we sort of objectify, right? And so those are just some more contemporary examples of the battle between how liberal feminists and radical feminists might evaluate representations of sexuality in pop culture. For radical feminists, sexual identity and behavior are social constructs. And for radical feminists, they say that we still live in an era of patriarchy. And how we think about sex is a reflection of sexual stereotypes that reinforce the power of men. And so for them, prostitution and pornography, at least as it's currently configured, reinforces those stereotypes, right? And they may even take it as far as to sort of say the WAP video might reinforce these stereotypes. That women are seen as the makers of sexual pleasure, the thing that tempts, right? And so in pornography, which is usually very women-centered, in prostitution, it's usually women who are selling the sex, that it reinforces this idea that a patriarchal notion that women are the producers of sexual pleasure, that they're the temptress, and that men are the takers of the pleasure, that they have this uncontrollable desire, they must have it, right? And so that it's this reinforcement of patriarchy, and that's why they are sort of negative about the production of pornography, and also negative about legalizing prostitution. From the radical feminist point of view, that true sexual liberation is freeing yourself from existing sexual norms that are a reflection of male dominance. And that what needs to happen is there needs to be a radical reconfiguration of sexuality. And from the radical feminist perspective, how do we best achieve that reconfiguration? Well, the first step is to end the way that expressions of sexuality that, at least as they are today, which they view as a reflection of patriarchy, for them, they want to end the current configuration, right? So that they can create a new one. And so to achieve that goal, radical feminists sometimes find alliance with moralists, right? They sort of feel that when you regulate sexuality, when you regulate and abolish prostitution, when you regulate or abolish pornography, that what you're really doing is that it's a regulation, it's a condemnation, it's an attack upon the patriarchal conception of sexuality. And so then when you get rid of that patriarchal conception of sexuality, then you can start anew with a new, more radical feminist expression, a truly radical feminist, a truly feminist expression of sexuality, right? And that's why radical feminists are called radical, right? They want root change, right? That if you're going to have change, you got to go down to the root. And it can't just be celebrating your sexuality. You've really got to reconfigure how we think about sexuality from the radical feminist perspective. You need root change, and you get that by basically attacking and ending the current configuration. Now, keep in mind that public policy is about power. The more power you have, the more likely you are to shape the debate and impact policy. If you don't have political power, you're not going to be able to get lawmakers to institute the policy changes that you want to make. And so, to that end, feminists often get pulled into the moralist versus libertarian debate, because it's the moralists and the libertarians that generally have more political power. Those two viewpoints have a long tradition in American politics, and that they are going to have more political sway in policy debates. And so, feminists sometimes end up making some strange bedfellows. They will align themselves with sort of groups that you wouldn't think that they would align themselves with in order to get political power and to ultimately make policy and political change. So some examples of that. So there's a radical feminist. Her name is Andrea Dworkin, and she's a very outspoken anti-pornography feminist. A lot of people have issues with her because they sort of view her stance against pornography as sort of infringing upon freedom of expression, among other things. So, an example of that is Andrea Dworkin, who's this radical feminist, has aligned herself with conservatives along the way, right? So has aligned themselves with Focus on the Family, aligned themselves with, you guessed it, Phyllis Schlafly, because these were also groups that were against pornography. So you align yourselves with people who have political power, and then that's going to allow you to achieve your policy goals. On the flip side of that, another example is liberal pro-porn feminists, right? So liberal feminists are more like, hey, it's your body, it's your choice. If you want to do pornography, if you want to sell pornography, go for it. And so the liberal feminists have gotten in bed with, wait for it, ACLU, okay, the American Civil Liberties Union. That's not so surprising. But the founder of Hustler, Larry Flynt, right? Because Larry Flynt, as a purveyor of pornographic magazines, fought for his First Amendment rights in order to do that. And so you have feminists who are aligning with probably an individual that may be a feminist, right? But it's kind of a little bit of a stress there. So what the F? Can't swear because it's college. But who would have thunk it? Okay, but that's politics for you, right? You align yourself with the groups that's going to help you come closer to achieving your policy goal. All right, thanks for listening. And on the next slides, we'll talk about the phases of, or the different phases of prostitution policy.